do some.
Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created, this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our mission.
Well, that's just beautiful. Welcome to Mind Control Canada, Mkcanada, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Andreas Xirtus, and today I have my two friends and maybe Bernard. Bernard, the crypto alchemist, might be joining us as well. Jordan, I did it right this time. When the mirror is great. Jordan, how you doing, man? How's Canada feeling tonight?
Canada's going great, my friend. Beautiful night here in downtown Toronto.
Beautiful. And then Bernard, you just made it in from your vehicle. That's crazy. So where in Canada are you, eh?
Technology, hands-free, so it's not illegal.
Fuck yeah, Bernard.
It's out for a rip right now. All right, where in Canada are you?
I'm in Calgary, Alberta, so on the western side of things.
There we go, bringing all the perspectives.
Oh, fuck yeah, bud.
Kurt's here to bring the American perspective back with me. See, when we think about Canada, we have to imagine Canada as, it means settlement, right, in ancient words. And so it's a state of mind. And I think the settlement state of mind has really embodied itself in Americans as well. Kurt, how you feeling, bro?
Oh, I'm alive. Yeah.
And that's the American take. Yes. It's a crazy world we're living in right now. There's a bunch of things happening in Canada. It all comes back to ancient times, Tartaria, but also the revision history that we're taught in school or not taught in school. It seems like most people didn't even learn about the Beaver Wars. But I mean, South Park didn't make it up. It's a Canadian legacy, the Beaver Wars. It's something that I want to show just really quickly before we go too deep into the news. I asked Dolly to draw some pictures of the Canadian Beaver War, and AI knew exactly what to do. It knew what it was like when the beavers and the humans were working together. That's not exactly. I mean, but look at this. These beavers are actually eating people. I don't know if you can see that. These are tiny little people and giant beavers.
Dog.
Yeah, AI knows. AI knows what really happened. And if you look into giant beavers, there were sloths and beavers that were 26 feet at one point.
Whoa!
That must be prior Younger Dryas wars then.
Dude.
If we got giant beavers eating humans.
Right. Yeah. So this is something that we didn't really anticipate because we're thinking, the Beaver Wars are, in the 1800s, you've got dudes fighting in the land of Beaver, which is like a colony, but it's also in a place where we were told that natives fought giant beavers and have stories of giant sloths. And there's all kinds of crazy stories about giant creatures in giant lakes and things across America and Canada and North America. And yeah, I added vaporwave to it and I was really excited. That really brought home look at these, like they're wearing infrared goggles. I don't know if that's what actually happened, but I just thought it was important that we shared that story a bit. But I mean, how are you guys doing and what's been going on this week? Like, what have you guys been noticing happening?
Gas prices are back up.
What? Oh, yeah.
Noticed that instantly.
Fuck,
Dude.
God.
Don't
Yeah, I
worry,
mean,
it's about to get totally better because everybody's going to lose their jobs and we can't go buy gas. So then the price goes down. It's the only way. Yeah.
See, Kurt's like Marty McFly in Back to the Future, and Canada is like 1955. So I mean, it's awesome, but it's a kinder, better, greater generation. But we've seen this before, and it's about to hit Canada as hard as it hit the United States. There's going to be no one able to afford the gas. You won't have any private property. I mean, Canada's already been moving that way for a while, right?
Oh yeah. Well, the pound just crashed. The world economy is just so related at this point to where everything just kind of dominoes everything else. So yeah, it's gonna fuck with everything else. And weirdly, even though everything's run on like fiat currency, the US dollar is becoming stronger, and it's only becoming strong is because everybody else's financial markets are slightly more fucked than the American markets are. And so everybody kind of flocks. We're still kind of the world standard, and that's the only reason the dollar's going strong and the pound has kind of crashed recently. So things are about to fucking hit the fucking ceiling when it comes to just how bad the fallout is becoming, because now England, well, the UK, they want to kind of pivot. They want to pivot all of this, and they want to ease their monetary policy, but their inflation is still really high. So the thing about interest rates is, as long as the federal interest rates, especially the US ones, are under the inflation rate, essentially the interest rates are still negative and you're still going to have an inflation problem. So it's like either we crash the economy by raising the interest rates to an incredibly high degree, or we keep the interest rates low and then we let inflation just destroy the middle class and the working class person, and that ends up destroying the economy anyways down the road. So we're seeing that in England right now. Sorry to go on an extended rant, but it is a huge thing. This all came from gas prices, which are totally an interdependent, economic measuring stick of how things are going. Yeah, it's totally fucked, and that's going to end up impacting Canada. I think Canada's been in a very privileged position along with the US. I think we're also interdependent to a certain degree, but we also have a very highly related economy. But we're going to be the last people to feel the extreme pain. And I think the UK is feeling that extreme pain right now before everyone else is, and along with Europe, along with like Nord Stream.
The fact that we hit the fourth leak today in the Russian gas pipeline, that's been connected to like a rise in prices and the expectations, right? Because it's always about futures. And so futures commodity trading is trading on expectations. And they're saying, well, yeah, how bad could it be? Well, in your expectations, you want to say it's as bad as possible to drop the price, and then also to raise the price. Because you're like, well, how much is this worth? Well, this is worth a lot because it could never happen again, even though it's likely. I mean, right now we were talking the other day about the Baltic pipeline opening. And so there's a new pipeline that's already been built that no one was even talking about, that's been laid, painted yellow like bananas. Right?
That Baltic pipeline only carries 10% of what Nord Stream 1 carried, not even Nord Stream 2.
Right. But it could be useful for Europe. I mean, that could hit Europe, and then there could be the idea of diverting so that there's certain oil in certain places. And so you're going to have Euro oil, and Euro oil will be like imported. It'll be a completely different kind of oil. I mean, that's what they're headed towards. I mean, it seems like, I don't know.
It's like The Godfather, man. Like the scene out of The Godfather.
Dude, I saw a link though to like money pits, right? Because if you think about it, people got all kinds of ideas of finding money, treasures. Like this is the Canada's amazing lost treasures people are still searching for. There's the Oak Island money pit. Everyone kind of talks about Oak Island. I mean, we could talk about that if you have any thoughts.
Never heard of it. Jeez.
You know about Oak Island?
Site, right? Off of Nova Scotia or something like that.
Yeah. There's a whole weird history with Oak Island. The idea that there's like this giant tunnel with the Ark of the Covenant buried beneath it, with like radiation that pours off of the thing. There's a show where dudes go out with their money and they're trying to dig in there to get to what they believe they can find. At 153 foot, they find a note of a map about where the Knights Templar buried one of these magical things. And they found all kinds of weird connections to, Egyptian, like the Egyptian mummy in Niagara Falls, which was originally purchased from Joseph Smith, or went through Joseph Smith to the Chicago Fire Museum, and then New York, and then to Niagara Falls. Yeah.
I never heard of that. There was an Egyptian mummy in Niagara Falls.
Oh, it's still there. Niagara Falls Mummy. If you go Niagara Falls Museum, the mummy in Niagara Falls, like there it is, right? Maybe they said they. Oh, did I just read that they reclaimed it? Egypt reclaimed the pharaoh of Niagara Falls.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know this. Okay, so so this has happened 2002. Maybe that's what it is. But
A little late there, bud.
yeah, I mean, hey. But the mummy Niagara Falls. So Niagara Falls gets some weird sometimes. Back in 1800s, the Niagara Falls Museum opened in Canada. It had a lot of odd things,
It's
including
on the Canada side.
Yeah. Of course. And that's right. Niagara Falls was home to a pharaoh for about 140 years. An overlooked fact about Niagara Falls Museum was its brief move over to the U.S. side of the border. In other words, Ramses the first pharaoh of Egypt spent time on the both sides of Niagara Falls. This is a story that very few people know, and if you're interested in details, I recommend the article by the Welland Tribune. So I mean, there's a bunch of people. I mean, yeah, you have to go way back
And
to find
Egypt
it.
has reclaimed this mummy, so it's officially Egyptian. Yet they refuse to rewrite the history.
It's not even just that; it's a pharaoh.
Exactly.
It was Ramses. Who's Ramses the first, right? Let's remember Ramses the first, Moses, son of Ra, who was associated with the 19th dynasty and connected with Moses and Akhenaten, right? This is in the Bible. They say this is the pharaoh that went up against Moses. And so this is the mummy that supposedly came with Joseph Smith when they robbed the crypt. So, I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff about Oak Island, because Oak Island is supposed to be, this, not just that it has magic or gold, but also like radiation, and it kills people. It's somehow trapped and everything. And one of the X's on the treasure map is to go to Oak Island.
Huh.
Xirtus, have you ever heard of the Medicine Hat Badlands Guardians?
No, what's that?
You should look that up right now, because I'm going to be exploring it the next couple of weeks. It's kind of like the Nazca lines, like from space. You can only see the heads from space.
Whoa.
But it's a bunch of native heads.
Okay, so these are, wow. Okay, so this is crazy. You've got these giant heads that are carved in there. Yeah, all right. That's pretty intense. And so the Badlands Guardian geomorphological feature. So then they're trying to push the idea that they're just naturally
pareidolia.
Right.
No, there's a site called the Ferrum Foundation, and the guy actually has right there, those numbers are what he calls geoglyphs, and they actually plot out to all the other ancient sites in the world, including the Bosnian pyramids and the Yanaguni structure, and that it pretty much proves they're intelligently built and that it's an ancient lost grid system.
Whoa. This is epic.
That's cool.
Let me pop go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, when we're done here, I'll raise you those. Sorry, what were they called, Bernard?
Medicine Hat Badlands Guardians.
No, the metroglyphs. Is that what you said?
Oh, geoglyphs.
Geoglyphs. Okay. I'll raise you geoglyphs, and I'll see you check out the petroglyphs in Peterborough. Those are badass.
I think they might actually be aligned, a lot of the petroglyphs with the Ferrum's geoglyphs.
What? This is
Those are
nuts.
cool.
Are you kidding me? Ancient origins, petroglyphs left in Canada by Scandinavians 3,000 years ago. Hundreds
if you
of petroglyphs.
come here, Xirtus, if you come here, we'll go check that out, man. I went to go see it. It is so beautiful. It's amazing.
Whoa.
You're not allowed to take photos of it.
Damn. Of course.
So
Hundreds
whatever
of
photos you find are, all you can see.
Hundreds of petroglyphs are etched on a slab of crystalline limestone about 180 by 100 feet, a third of the size of a football field in Peterborough, Canada. They may have been left by Algonquin Native Americans about 1,000 years ago, or Scandinavian traders a few thousand years ago. The latter claim flouts the common understanding of history, which places Europeans in the New World much later, but it has had a few prominent supporters. They say the depictions of animals, solar symbols, geometric shapes, boats, and human figures on the so-called Peterborough stone reflect a style used in the Old World. Oh, wow, I mean, this is crazy. A large ship was
really
drawn in
cool,
the style
dude.
of Scandinavia. For example, a large ship was drawn in the style common in Scandinavia, according to Boston University professor Robert Skoke, a Yale-educated geologist. Skoke's opinions on the Peterborough Stone were recorded by journalist Charles Keogh. This is interesting. I mean,
They have a map. They have a map there of the whole thing that I want to go back and I want to take a photo of the map because it is so cool. Like
dude,
you're not
this-
allowed. You're not allowed to take photos, but like I'd love to get a photo of the map. And there's a badass turtle there too. I love it. There,
Dude, this
there's the
giant-
turtle.
Wait,
on the
where's
right.
where here?
Down
no.
a little bit on the right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Turtle Island.
There you go, baby.
Man, so I mean, what do you think this means? Do you think that this is Algonquin or Scandinavian, or do you think it means that they're interacting with each other?
I was just gonna say, like maybe they're interacting. Like maybe it's one. When I went there, it looked like it was one people's that did it, but maybe it was one teaching another. It's really cool stuff.
Or
It's
something
really
where they
cool.
were all part of it or something like that, or a peace thing, maybe. Who knows? Ancient as F, though.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's cool stuff.
The Kensington Runestone is a
Oh, there
thing
you go.
in,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Minnesota, and
I've seen the Kensington Runestone. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah,
Yep.
so like I realized that it was fake when I got to the museum. So this is the thing that was weird. And then there's the real one exists, but it's like down the road in a park in this big locked building that you can get into because it's public. But like the museum has a copy of it, and the real one is near where it actually was. So it's crazy. But discovered in central Minnesota in 1898 in Alexandria. Closest to the settlement of Kensington, which is interesting because Cambridge, Kensington, all these kind of names, but this is where Terry Gilliam from Monty Python is born and from before he got to Britain, as the town that the Scandinavian runestone's from. And a lot of people were like, oh, it doesn't make any sense, but using like the newest laser technology to scan it, it's pretty clearly real. And there's a number of other things that there's like 13 that follow a trail up to the Hudson Bay and get their way into the middle of the United States. And they all say things like, okay, this one was the weirdest because they get to a point where they get attacked. And so they lose some guys and then they leave. They go back upriver because they're not welcome in that area. You know, there's other people that live there and they're hunted out. And so that bothers a lot of people's narratives, like the idea that Native Americans were just like hyper welcoming of strangers, you know, that they didn't know with metal and stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to the Kensington Runestone as well. Man, there was another, okay, where did I put this thing? Dinosaur Mummy. Did you hear this one? Dinosaur Mummy discovered in Canada. So a so-called dinosaur mummy may be contained within a rocky hill in Canada, according to scientists. In a statement issued earlier this month, University of Reading, this rare type of fossil refers to finds where the entire skeleton of the dinosaur may be preserved. So what they think basically is there was like a huge sandstorm, but more like a volcanic blast and then instant fossilification and petrification, which led to the entire body being trapped, you know, and it's this giant thing clearly about the size of like an elephant or, you know, much larger than an elephant. But
do you know whereabouts that is? Is it in Drumheller or no?
Let's see here.
I was gonna say Drumheller, maybe.
The site, Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta.
Yeah, that's Drumheller.
Yeah, exactly.
There.
So how do I spell that?
I'm going to be going up there as well to explore soon, and I've got pictures from the last time I was in Drumheller, and it looks like every single mound in the city is actually a pyramidal mound that's artificially constructed with parallel layers of alternating parallel layers of charcoal and then two other different colored sands all the way through up them. And it seems that anything labeled as these badlands is from a past plasma catastrophe sort of thing.
Bad for a reason. Yeah, Badlands. Always a nuclear fallout place. Dang.
Exactly. That's crazy, man. Wow.
These kind of look like the giant mushrooms too. They talk about like ancient mushrooms that grew up silicon trees, you know, all these kind of mesas, but closer together. So do you think that there was some sort of a giant fallout in Canada, or like what do you think happened here?
Well, it's the exact same as like the Badlands down in the States, and even the Grand Canyon pyramid complex and Moab. It's all this similar, what looks like antediluvian societies or something much, much more ancient and eroded. Have you ever seen the topographical map of the Grand Canyon pyramid complexes compared to the Orion star constellation?
Whoa, let's pull it up.
Yeah, Orion. I think I've seen it, but let's see if we can get if I can find the right picture right now. Star. You can see this and this right next to each other. You know.
That one right there. So it's like every single star in the Orion, like in the sky, not just of the constellation, but in the sky around Orion, lines up identically to each of the peaks of the Grand Canyon pyramid complex, aka temples.
Right. And there was this thing, the Grand Canyon Egyptian, right? Like they found a bunch of stuff and then they hit
it. Expedition.
Right. And it's becoming more and more common. This is how stuff works, talking about it. So, I mean, it's becoming a thing where they're going to talk about it more. But so why then is Canada the way it is? Like, because Canada seems so, it's covered in trees. It seems kind of like barren. Do you think what does that mean? Like a full-on wipeout of what was Canada?
Most likely, because the Younger Dryas event, they're starting to say was caused by comets hitting the northern glacier and melting it within like a year or something like that, flooding the world. So go along with like Randall Carlson's work.
Yeah, I mean, so then the other thing is, how long ago was this? Because Randall Carlson says this was like 20,000 years ago, but Fomenko suggests this was like 600 to 800 years ago. Where do you fall?
Right, like that's the real big question. And that a lot of the like Tartarian maps and stuff with the J's in front of it and the I's in front of it, it's like they're trying to say that it was this entire different world only a few hundred years ago, and then was that I and that J actually representing a different millennium and not just a few hundred years ago, but rather a couple thousand years ago, possibly.
It makes it seem so much easier. Like if it's so far long ago, then we don't have to like even worry about it. And then if you think about it, all the stories we're hearing about Canada, like the changing of Canada, here's some other treasure things beyond the barrels, silver coins in Openicon. How do you say that? Openicon Lake?
Yeah, Openicon.
Yeah, and so there's supposed to be like tons of treasure hidden across the Canada.
DB Cooper's treasure, maybe, man.
What's that?
DB Cooper? Come on,
Yeah.
DB Cooper.
Maybe.
Hijacked a plane and the.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Oh,
of course. Yeah, maybe because it was from Seattle.
Let's say he's based off of a Canadian comic book.
He does have.
Look it up. The Cooper. I think it's called, the comic book's called like DB Cooper or something.
Huh.
And
Wow.
he's a Canadian pilot.
What?
There you go.
That's crazy.
He's a French. He's a French pilot.
Dude, French are always doing stories about stealing stuff. It's like they love Lupin the Third way more than Sherlock Holmes. I don't know what that says about their people, but this was an article that came up recently.
Here we go.
Why are Chinese police operating in Canada while our own government and security service apparently look the other way? This is in San Francisco too. I mean, there are situations where Chinese people are saying they're being stalked by Chinese police cars, but they're in the United States or Canada. Like, what's going on with this?
What the hell?
Yeah.
I have not heard of that at all. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, in China, the high-profile TV drama "The Name of the People" has become a smash hit, and that show Chinese agents enter the U.S. posing as businessmen so they can repatriate a factory manager who fled abroad with his huge ill-gotten wealth. You see, this isn't just a show; this is a way of life. But a new study by European, yeah, right. But I mean, all over, because Seattle, Maryland, it's not a city, but DC, District of Columbia, and New York City, San Francisco, Silicon Valley. I mean, there's a lot of stories connecting the fires in California to this. I'll say it like that. But the Fuzhou Public Security Bureau has established more than 50 overseas police service centers. That's right. The Fuzhou Public Security Bureau has established more than 50 overseas police service centers in cities across the world, including
3 in Toronto.
3 of them alone in Toronto. That's how big Toronto is. They have to have 3 overseas Chinese police services run, because Canada's largest Chinese diaspora. How many people? It's like 1 million people almost that are Chinese in Toronto alone, right?
No, we got lots of Asians, lots of Chinese. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Andreas, I'm just got to my friend's house here. I'm gonna head in and try to log back in through my laptop, so I'm not using up all my mobile data.
yeah,
Hey,
word, bro.
Bernard.
Yeah.
I will be right back.
Dude, fight with spirit. But this is an outrage. Chinese police setting up offices in Canada, then persuading alleged criminals to return to the motherland to face justice, while our own government, I think they're talking about Canada, and security services apparently choose to look the other way. Represents a gross violation of Canada's national sovereignty, international law, and the norms of diplomacy. China is extending the grip of its Orwellian police state into Canadian country with seemingly no worry about being confronted by Canada's own national security agencies. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police and politicians of all stripes routinely condemn Chinese state harassment of people in Canada, but what actions are taken kind of looks like nil. I don't know. So what do you think about this?
That's a weird one, man. Like,
I don't think you could like create a more bizarre sort of scenario of like it sounds like something you wouldn't believe, and it would just be a conspiracy theory. But like,
yeah, you got Dudley Do-Right going off his rocker over here. Like,
dude, I remember. Let me see if I can find a picture of a Chinese police car. They're like Audis, right? And so
a Chinese policeman.
Well, yeah. But the police cars, a lot of the time they're Volkswagens or Audis.
Or little dinky ones.
And well, they have in the United States, though. I mean, like, so I was saying, like, a guy I knew was afraid because there was one that was following around in his neighborhood. And this is like 12 years ago. And so the amount, and his parents were in China and they had a big company. So there's a number of circumstances that sound exactly like this TV show that they're promoting to. So it's very real. It's not even a question anymore.
Yeah. So
it makes you wonder, because like obviously those are relatively like small cars. It seems like if anybody in China actually had a backbone, they would never have to actually pull over for police. Like if they just had like a moderately fast car, they'd be like, all right, we'll see.
I mean, the thing is that those are those cars, you know what I mean? But like, also you have to imagine like Men in Black or something. Like you could have a bigger engine under the hood, and that was a big thing with the American.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think
Royal Crown Victoria was a Canadian car, right?
Yeah. Well, I think they're also so used to the police state in general to where like it wouldn't matter if they were, mounted on horseback, they would still pull over for it.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, is about making like the police officer like more, and not to disrespect anybody, but I think they do pick people on purpose that are the least impressive. Not always, but they're like in let me give an example. Like in Venice Beach, California, you might have these lethargic, old, and maybe they're a very small woman or something like that, or there's a guy in a wheelchair, and they're all great cops. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that they'll. Cops? Yeah, but they'll that way when you're getting arrested by the force of the force, not the force of the individual, and it becomes more and more apparent to you that it's this elephant rope. It's a jump rope tying the elephant up instead of a giant chain. But the elephant still submits, and I think that's what they're doing when they use
like
these
the 4-foot blondes with the ponytail that's taller than her.
But like in California, and I know in Canada too, that if a drug dealer or somebody with a street racing car gets his car taken from him, that car becomes a highway patrol car. I've seen Teslas.
What about the drugs?
Yeah, and you can only imagine, right?
Dude, there's so much racing right outside my house every night. It's so loud, and like honestly, every night I'm just like waiting for is someone gonna crash? Like it's crazy.
Really?
I'm surprised that there aren't more accidents. There was a huge accident less than a year ago, maybe like 5 or 6 months ago, and it was crazy.
This is real noise from street racing and modified cars in Toronto is out of control.
This was just like a month ago so I'm downtown east on Valley, so yeah, the DVP, that's right by me, man.
Dang.
Yeah.
Why are they doing this? Kids got nothing else to live for but driving fast? I don't know. Do you ever have this, Kurt? Do you have did anyone street race where you're at?
Not again. I think that's a more popular thing for the city. Like, obviously, people will like race occasionally with each other, but you don't really see it. Again, like there's like 800 people directly here, and well, actually, so I near Penn State University, Penn State. Has, yeah, they have a huge like Asian population. I remember specifically there were Asian people racing, like street racing in their cars up towards like the university. That's one example in particular. It might actually happen more often than I'm aware of, but that's like 20 miles away from where I am now.
A lot of stuff there happens more than you're aware of.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. There's probably I think every university town has some dark shit going on.
Butt fucking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the whole Sandusky situation, but you have to. That went on for like 20 years before everything came to surface. So, like, what the hell else is going on?
Sports are sketchy sometimes. It's like hockey teams and stuff.
Oh yeah, well, sports, they definitely make people stupid. That's why. Even if sometimes I allow myself to get entertainment value out of sports, but like when it comes to football, like I almost want the home team to lose because like I legitimately think it serves a function as to making people stupid. It satiates them. It makes them ignore everything else. The perfect example of what I'm getting at is when Penn State's pretty left when it comes to the American political spectrum. They're a pretty left university. I think the university system generally is a little bit more left, but Penn State's probably more left than the average university.
They're classical liberal, moderate left. They're the Democrats. They're not Marxists, but yes.
Yeah, they're
as a Californian.
That being said, like when the lockdowns first happened, they were very like pro lockdown. They were very pro authority. They get your vaccine. They did vaccine mandates. Yes, they did vaccine mandates. That tells you enough. Like they did the mandates. That shows you which side of the spectrum they were on, for better or for worse. So fast forward a year later, they opened up Penn State football games at a revived peak of the pandemic. Like there was no restrictions on those football games. They were able to fill them up to 100,000 people. 100,000 people during those games. Wow. Several home games, and that's when our ICUs were at least at 90% capacity and occasionally 100% capacity. So really it was an absolute true form of hypocrisy, and it was hypocrisy in its purest form. No one gave a shit because it's football,
we gotta go to the game.
And hopefully no one gave a shit because it was just COVID. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think it's kind of like on both sides of the thing. They're saying, hey, how horrible can it be? Extra, extra, extra. Read all about it. It's as horrible as it could possibly be. You get to read my newspaper because I know it's the worst. It's even worse than I know how much worse it is than those guys know. Read how bad it is on my website versus other people that are like, yeah, but I got to work. Can I work? And they're like, yeah, double bag it because you got to go to work. And so they just keep happening. And the thing is, football is it fulfills the most important thing, the energy. I don't know, but now I'm really interested in street racing. I kind of need to like research it. I feel like that might be I wonder, does street racing replace sports in the urban cyberpunk reality? Because
absolutely it does, dude.
Yeah, I mean, do you
That's
know
one
more
thing, anyways?
Because the idea of like getting out of like the sport,
parkour,
yeah,
street racing, rollerblading is gonna come back hard, dog.
Super huge fruit boot for life. That's the way I
got it. Beater back.
Yeah. I'm not totally anti-sport. I think there's some room for just small.
Sports.
Well, we went deep into rollerball before, and that was the point of that movie, is that the sport team becomes important and you lose interest in the individual playing the sport because he's just a gladiator and he dies and the next one comes. But the team, it's all about the team, like that hometown Houston or whatever. That team keeps, and you just start to forget the names of people because it's all about the numbers or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, but also you've seen this in Germany. Germany became obsessed with the soccer hooligans culture from Italy and France, replaced the army
that
surplus
Nazi thing.
Well, the thing is, I was going to go before that. Like the reason why they went, like, you got to look for symptoms. The reason why they went for Nazi was because at first they were already wearing their army surplus uniforms from World War I. They were going to bars and drinking together at the beer halls. They had this sort of like group activity, and it was impossible to drink unless you all worked together to drink. So that's how they had to make that happen. I mean, eventually, yeah, that got exploited the same way BLM did. But after the war, then they get into sports, and sports has become the thing for them. You have a win or a lose in Berlin. It's like Oakland, like they just destroy everything. And it's crazy because what are they saying? It's like, okay, I'm using sports and I'm using riots and violence, and they become inextricably linked ideas that we win or lose, and it's not even a political issue at that point, right? Like, Bernie, what do you think about hockey?
Bernard.
I love the hockey. I'm Canadian, eh?
Yeah, we like sports over here, man.
Dude, rollerball made by a Canadian who loved hockey but was worried about the violence in hockey. Do you have that thing?
So let's do rollerball then.
It's pretty deep. I was trying to find the article we had on Canadian violence in hockey, right? That was a thing that we had. Let me see.
Sex, it was like the sex one. You're muted there, Bernard.
Let me see. Oh yeah, you're muted, bro. But
I said, don't try to take out our goaltender, eh?
Don't fucking do it. Bang, back in the net there. Puck go back. Stop the goal.
I wonder if like Canadians are even real anymore, right? Because it's just a British mind control conspiracy anyway. Just pretend you're not.
Buddy, what is that? What are you trying to say to me right now?
So
what are you saying to me when you're talking me to my face with your mouth there, bud?
We're the
the Flames, he got sexually abused by his coach. It was a huge scandal in Western Canada.
A huge Clearfunkel.
Now, Kurt, I know someone who went to Penn State. You have no comments or opinions on sex scandals in sports, right? But
I never went to Penn State. I actually
you lived around, right?
I went to a tiny
the
university.
SSS.
But I've been around the university for like 20 years. Well, like 20 years out of my 30 years of being alive. You
were never directly hazed with a pine cone, which is good, I would say.
The girls stay the same age.
No, I was never like sexually abused at any point in my life. Sorry if that's a deep subject.
Just the pine cone?
No, well, I think the only anecdote
that was the Penn State thing. The coach and the team was doing that, in the ritual haze.
They were pine cone? Oh yeah, I remember.
Oh, back up. I thought we were just having some fun here. Tell me about the pine cone.
Let me see if I can find that thing. Penn State pine cone. Go ahead, Kurt, while I look for stuff.
Yeah, so in high school, I feel like there's a sexual assault case in every instance of high school sports. So
for sure.
And it, like my football team, I didn't interpret it as like major. This is a very sensitive topic to a lot of people, though. For example, in our football team, we would urinate on each other.
Wow,
that's kinky.
But like it was in the shower, and it was sterile, so you just rinse off some sterile urine.
Young alpha sort of thing, like dog on dog,
right? Yeah. Survive the dog.
The cracker thing. You did the cracker thing, didn't
Limp
you?
Limp Bizkit.
No,
yeah.
For the wrestling team, before I joined the wrestling team, I can pretty much I didn't witness this. I wasn't on the team at the time, but they took one of the freshmen who was on the varsity team and they actually stuck something in his anus while they held him down, which to me, that's actually a verified.
Right.
Yeah, that's actually a true story. And the fact that it happened at my high school and with the given sports context, like our wrestling team was actually huge and like won a national championship one year. That makes me think about every other high school and how often
you got so much extracurriculars going on there.
Exactly. Well, and like it was, I always thought it was a fucked up situation, and like what the fuck. Yeah, it was my first like what the fuck moments of high school. Yeah.
Kim Chipo says Pissbombe is the same thing in German sports in the showers. I can't do his accent.
What is it? Pissbombe?
Pissbombe. It's like piss bomb. And so
Pissbombe.
Yeah. So I mean, so there's something weird about like the Viking, Saxon. I don't know if that's what it is or what, but it's like sports culture comes from gladiators, right? And from dudes that were janissaries, like forced to be soldiers, ritually hazed, and then they rise up on top in a world of dog eat dog,
Doggy style?
Bernie.
Oh, doggy dog.
Bernie's like saying stuff. He's
I'm
muted.
just glad that my mom kept me out of sports as a child.
Yeah,
by the
right?
sounds of it.
Sounds like head injuries weren't your only fear, eh? I don't know.
Saved your ass.
Yeah.
Literally.
But there was also the sexual assaults that are going on in hockey. What was it was like, I lost it again. It was here, almost there. Here we go. No, there it is. Sex shame in Canada's national game. A fifth state investigation has found junior hockey players were the subject of police investigation. At least 15 group sex assault cases across Canada since 1989. When the world finally got cool was 1989, so that's a bad synchronicity. Before she blacked out, the young woman said she was just watching the 20-something men play video games. But when she woke up in a bedroom in West Kelowna, British Columbia, she said she was naked and 4 of them were taking turns penetrating her orally and vaginally. At one point, she said a man choked her until she couldn't breathe. And there's just been a number of circumstances like this in all sports. But
Sounds like hockey.
Yeah, in Canada, like in the hockey world, like things are kind of brutal, right? Like, what's the deal with hockey?
Oh, that happened in Thunder Bay too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ottawa. And yeah, I remember it happening.
Kelowna is the wild, wild west, though. But at the same time, that's just nothing excuses that sort of behavior.
I mean, it just seems like, is it a problem in all sports? Is it something that's being hidden, or I guess it's not being hidden now, but why was it being hidden for so long in Canadian pop culture? Like, is it because hockey's so important and integral to, the patriotism of a Calgarian? Is that how you say that? Calgarian? Those are all different questions.
Calgarian, yeah.
Calgarian. It seems like you should be called Calgarian.
Calgarian. Yes, I am a Calgarian.
But I mean, like, is it because American sports, we have these same problems, like the R. Kelly thing, we apparently humans are just horrible. But I mean, why is it happening in sports?
Trauma, right? Trauma causes trauma. So a lot of it is just traumatized people then continuing the trauma cycle within it. And the amount of competition causes more trauma. There's a violent, alpha sort of mentality within hockey as well. It's like the one sport other than professional fighting that fighting is allowed in that sport. So I think it's indoctrinated into it, maybe.
We got a couple super chats. Stefan says, sports are a form of chemical hormonal warfare. The city that wins has a measurable 10 to 20% increase in testosterone and the losers down the same amount. That's pretty interesting. Also, machines racing, and then Minneapolis has street racing as well. eBay execs get jail for stalking Boston News WCVB. That's interesting. Could look into that as well.
Hey, is that the last time Canada won a gold?
In
It's
what?
been a while.
It's kind of a
In
bum.
hockey? Buddy. Fucking watch your mouth, eh?
What about the spies? So a spying scandal is a reminder of Canada's lack of espionage vision. This article just came out. I thought it was pretty funny. Do I have to do like a thing?
Lack of spy vision. What are you gonna do?
Hey, don't insult our one patrol ship, eh? It's a canoe, and them are working real hard up here.
Yeah,
Got a
see,
bit of a bunk in it, man.
that's the thing though. So, Canada, they play dumb. You got it. You guys, everyone can pretend that Canada doesn't have, like, the Canadian Mounted Police looks silly. Like, that's like our
Dude,
They're still
come
mounted on
on.
horses, eh? That's why they're the mounted police.
The Mounties are pretty cool, eh?
No,
Look
they
at
are.
that.
They are though, and that's like that's the whole ruse. That's the whole plan. Because you got
They're pretty cool.
these dudes are like Unix programmer, Eagle Scout equivalents that have
With a
taken over
fucking
Canada.
gun.
Yeah.
Are they as
Yeah,
brainwashed
they
as our
operate
military, though?
Stingray.
That's what
They're
I
listening
wonder.
to our phones.
Kurt, don't you imagine that if you wore that outfit, you'd have to be more brainwashed than our military, or at least as much, right?
What? I would think so. Like, what's their boot camp like? Like,
I don't know.
I've seen firsthand what boot camp can be like, and the techniques they use to just submit people. Yeah, it's you think. Yeah, I don't know. In my perspective,
Elaborate on your Full Metal Jacket.
my Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
So any piece of evidence that you can get, like if there's any documentaries about American boot camp, you take what they're willing to give you, and then imagine they turn the cameras off and basically take the sample that you got from what they were willing to show on video and times it by 10. That's what they actually do in boot camp. And there's actually no cameras in boot camp, I don't think, in any of the branches of the military. So basically, as brainwashed as maybe the drill instructors are, they almost have a free range to do almost whatever they want. Like, obviously in the rules, they cannot, touch their candidates. And it's like there's a lot of creativity you can have as a person. Like, oh, you just have this one arbitrary rule, let's see how much we can play around that. Like, yes, and Full Metal Jacket probably was a better idea of what it actually is. And you picture the opening sequence. He actually gets someone to choke themselves. I'm not saying I actually witnessed something like that, but imagine that a drill instructor, they run in shifts. Imagine dealing with that sort of intensity for 16, 17, or 18 hours out of every day for the period of 8 weeks. That's to where I don't think people quite understand what the process is. And in my opinion, the process probably should change, because it's not about actual national defense. It's about keeping a system going. And when you try, anytime I've discussed this with actual veterans, I have a great respect for what people have actually gone through, but I think part of the mentality is, oh, everybody else had to do it, I had to do it, therefore they should be doing it, without any other sort of rational justification about how it makes them an effective soldier. That's my take on it.
Causing trauma.
Yeah, it's a perpetual trauma cycle, and I think it's just done to kind of prop up the industrial complex to a certain degree. And you can see how that trauma manifests itself with, and I don't think we accurately look at PTSD. I think boot camp is designed to actually give people PTSD, and PTSD is actually something that I think actually happens in the majority of soldiers in cases. And we purposely choose not to look at it accurately. And that's part of the reason why veterans don't get the care they actually need or deserve, because it's not about creating effective soldiers. That's just my take on it.
Well, I mean, once you create maybe to be an effective soldier, I don't know, we get Yoda in here, but I feel like,
an effective soldier, though, is being indoctrinated in not to question and just follow orders. And
shell-shocked a bit. You have to be shell-shocked by screaming and explosions.
Partially yes, but also partially no. I think we're kind of refusing to admit that warfare has changed in such a ridiculous and dramatic fashion over the last 80 years. Like, the situations in which people actually need to directly go into combat I think they're becoming a lot farther and few between, because for a lot of reasons. Obviously technology is one, but you can be a sociopath. Maybe being a sociopath is the desired outcome, but I think in numerous other examples, we've seen that you can very easily be transformed into a sociopath and kill people behind a screen. And it's actually much easier to kill people behind a screen. So maybe that indoctrination doesn't serve the same function now as it did back then, but there's such a deep rooted tradition with these things that it's hard to change tradition without making a certain group of people butthurt.
The military has also changed so much from being like these debutantes in facades, which is still the way that academies are.
Here's how outdated it is.
Those suits white if they were in the army. Like, that just made zero sense right there.
Right? Yeah.
Well, they still make people march. If you march in formation into a battlefield today, you will get your entire unit killed.
Right.
There's no functional reason to teach people all the codes of marching other than to have it be a greater degree of brainwashing. So you're really telling me nobody can come up with a better way to brainwash people than to make them march, which is functionally useless in today's military.
But if you have people that engage in chess to beat battles, and from now on it's all cyberpunk warfare, then all it's going to take is one guerrilla soldier to blow up the servers for that, both of the in Switzerland that's holding both of the Discord servers or whatever is having the game. So I mean, it's not that we're out of the woods of gorilla. I think gorilla will still come back to haunt us because of the fact that it will defeat us if we get into some sort of a fair war game. War games should not be fair. Did you guys ever watch Major Payne?
Yeah.
So Major Payne, way underrated movie, I think. Right?
For
Like
sure.
it's a great film, and it's got pretty big people involved. I'm pretty sure he's Canadian, right? I don't know if that's true, but the deal here with Major Payne is you got a bunch of kids with rich parents, or one kid's like autistic and his parents can't deal with them. Like they're all these white kids that have no real alpha role model, and they go to boot camp, and then the boot camp teaches them discipline and order, and they still break rules and everything else, but they become like better men or something from that. And so I wondered, is that in conflict with your opinion that boot camp is dangerous? Like, can there be a good place? Because this is like, I used to sleep in a room full of hippies.
That's like Camp Cadet, which isn't supposed to be real boot camp, and it's a movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fair.
Any war movie in the U.S. is not honest. That's why if you read, I read several articles about why Maverick in the original Top Gun was actually a terrible fucking shit human being, and why no soldier should ever do what he does. The movies about the military are made to glorify the military by and large, and that's the only semi-honest movie probably was the first half of Full Metal Jacket, but then the second half is still designed to kind of glorify that. They show them coming back to being normal soldiers after that. And I've seen most of the movie, so I don't know how the movie ends up resolving, but
that's like I watched the first half of the VH1 special, and the band was doing great. Yeah. This is the thing though, like you think about it and it's brilliant, because I was thinking, I used to sleep on a trampoline with a bunch of hippies in college, right? And we all had the same dreams, and there's a place just like that that's existed forever, and it's called the military. The military has you share the same dream. They live, eat together, they do all this stuff, and so they have
shark attacks
sometimes. Well,
trampolines.
They have a monopoly on dreaming together, on singular
trampoline
instead of a trampolinopoly. Yeah, but then you've got college, and college is kind of designed to maybe mediate boot camp because it replaces it. You have orientation. It's a little softer. It gets you indoctrinated into the Marxist bureaucracy instead of directly into combat. If they need you in combat, they move you to the riot squad, and you get to go stand in the middle of a highway and block traffic or something. What was this? Earlier somebody was talking to Richie McGinnis, and he was talking about like riots and people and I was just remembering, he's like, yeah, imagine getting pepper spray. I was remembering Ben Davis getting pepper sprayed, and I wasn't foolish enough to chain myself up with these dudes. Like a group said, who wants to volunteer? Then they chained up all these people. The dude like got people to volunteer to do this, and the cop came over, just pepper sprayed him, and they took photos, and then that became the news, right? So like they have this program that exists that's outside of, I don't know. Like, it's just, what's worse? Or where do we go from there?
Where do we go from?
Because it's boot camp. This is boot camp too. This is the same thing. Kids are going through, it's like, okay, don't go to military, join college or something.
There is no comparison whatsoever. In my humble opinion, I really think there is no reasonable comparison between our university system, which does indoctrinate people to a certain degree, no, you're fine, and what the military services are designed to do. Like, obviously, the main message behind the military is our agenda is more important than your life, which I don't know if that creates a great national defense system. And in all perfect honesty, I think it really, in some degrees, it's at this point it's designed to protect the world order to a certain degree, because we do still police the world to a very heavy degree, not as much as we used to, but we still do. And as much of a mindless cog as you can be designed to be to enforce that system, that is what military basic training is supposed to do. And the most intense part is obviously the beginning part, the first 8 to 12 weeks of what it's supposed to be. But during that time, it's like saying like, oh, okay, maybe we have a system where someone's designing we're we're going to indoctrinate people by grabbing their ass a little bit. All right. Again, this is a metaphor. And you're taking that to, and the other opposite extreme end is like, okay, there's someone literally raping your asshole for the next 8 to 12 weeks of your life. And that's how I would compare it. Like, yeah, they're both forms of indoctrination, but it is, I don't think there is a reasonable comparison because
one's
I think
far more disciplined. Yeah. And has,
it's disciplined, but it is designed. It's almost designed to see. It's like there's a certain aspect of drill instructors, especially within the Marine Corps, and there's seems to be very documented instances of this happening. Of the drill instructors get proud if they make someone flip and try to commit suicide. Like it's taken as a badge of honor. That's how much they've been trained to just not to see everything in an alpha sort of dynamic. It's crazy. That's all I can say. It is crazy, and it's crazier than a lot of people are willing to admit. And I think that's why you see a lot of situations. Like I had a friend who also served in the military, and after her service was done, she ended up burning her uniform. Why don't we see news situations? Why don't we see instances of like that in the news? Because the system isn't. That comes back to referencing a book like, Manufacturing Consent. There's no media incentive to bring up the bad stories of why that happens, of people like dying in boot camp, of people having this trauma. That's not what our system is built to reinforce. It's not built to reinforce the bad parts of what the system is designed to do. So the media can't report on that. The media can't report on various other shit. If there's endless examples, and I don't want to rant too long, but I love the rants. Always keep going. Yeah, that's one example. The media doesn't have any incentive to report the bad things about the military. The media doesn't have the incentive to report the bad things about the public school system, about the university system, and for example, the weaknesses. This goes back to the thing, I'll say the pandemic, but the thing, we all know what that was about. When Johns Hopkins published their study saying essentially that the lockdowns were worthless, why didn't that make media headlines? It's because it didn't reinforce the bullshit fucking system. And that was a huge study. It was probably the most reputable university for medicine in the United States, and nobody gave a shit when that study came out. But it's there for everybody to see. No one wants to see that shit because that would force us to look at ourselves a little bit better and more accurately. So that's my rant on that, and that ties into the military system as well.
I mean, the youth of America is looking for something, though. I mean, the youth of the world.
They prey on the most poor and decrepit people. That's why the military is weirdly not very racist, because the military is like the opposite of racist, because we live in a class system, and minorities tend to be at the bottom of the class system, and that's exactly who the military preys on. So if you have this huge system of abuse, and your part of your system is formulaically abusing people, if it looks like if you're doing that on minorities, they're not going to say anything because that's the only way they're going to move up the economic ladder. It's like they treat it as a last resort. And for a lot of people, the military is the last resort. So in some ways it seems noble. And because it seems noble, you ignore all the bullshit and all the extra stuff that it's designed to do. It's supposed to make you, and this isn't just the US system. That's what I should say. This is what's fucked up about all the first world military system. And I guess if you're in the military in the Congo, it's going to suck in its own way too. But it's almost like everybody has the sin and everybody has the blood on their hands, and it's like, who's going to be the first person to make that better? I don't know. It's who does have the most just system. Maybe I think it's partially Switzerland, because military service is mandatory for all adults, and it's probably less intense. So maybe that would make it actually a little bit better, but I don't know.
Service guarantees citizenship. The thing with Switzerland, though, is they own when a war happens, they own the war, because all the money has to go through Switzerland when it happens. Yeah. And I would probably want to do a deeper dive into the Livonian Empire and the Livonian Confederacy and what happened in St. Petersburg, because they were like trying to build their own little country and why Rome is so deeply involved. There's a big thing that the Pope's trying to get all of his money out of the world banks into the private Vatican bank right now because of that. But in terms of Canada, there's all kinds of atrocities. The Canadian government's military is associated with Canadian citizens. We've seen and talked about things 150 years ago, but there's also things with the Air Force, right? And the CAF's whitewashing what they did in Afghanistan and Australia's war crimes. There's a lot of crazy stuff that
Our Air
happened.
Force has always got issues, whether it's the planes or the pilots or
Yeah, I mean, if you give a bunch of people amphetamines, what do you expect? But the thing is, there's a lot of other things besides military too, like in Canada especially, but this happens in the United States. There's jihad tourism and people that recruit for jihad tourism for other countries. So let's say you're not in the United States military, but you could be in Sweden, you could be in Canada, you could be in the United States. Somebody will say, hey, you can go this summer or this winter time when it's super cold would be the best time to do it. Like go to Syria during or whatever we're doing this month, the whatever Sharia du jour, and you can be a part of that. Let me see if I can find. I was just looking at it. Where to go? Canada. Where it is. Spy who smuggled teen to join Islamic State while working for Canada could be returning here. Justin Trudeau did not deny Ottawa's relationship with Al Rashid, saying the CSIS must be flexible and be creative in the war against terrorists. So in other words,
creative. What does that mean?
So it means like drafting teenage girls to join or British girls. Yeah, Canadians. Well, maybe, but like also just seeing tag and release, kind of like the Operation Fast and the Furious, where we didn't really watch the guns that we gave to the Mexican cartels. Same thing with Canadian teenagers, right? Just send the Canadian teenagers over there. Hope we get some information back from them. We got more, right? And this is going on in big cities across the United States, going on in Minneapolis, going on in New York City. I heard about a thing in Rochester, New York, at the border, which is
nice. I love Rochester.
Recruiting teenagers that have been disenfranchised. They're in a lower economic community. They first generation usually or something like that, and or maybe second, and then they're trying to they get involved with Islam, but it's like not Islam, the local church. It's like this is financed by the Canadian government to actually recruit people for jihad tourism for the Islamic State, the IS or the ISIL. And so this would qualify, like when we used to say, hey, did the Obama finance ISIL? Did Canada have anything to do with that? Well, here's examples of us doing it right now. But it seems like every time we look at Canada, it's like, oh, yeah. We're being creative.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not hiding it. We're happy that we're doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I don't know, do you have thoughts on jihad recruiting also, or just like kids that get, because this is also kids that join the military are just as much at risk, I feel like, or close to, if they can't get into the military, of joining someone else's.
All right, hey everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of Divulgence. We have made it to the 1 year.
You got something playing in one of your links, but Kurt, what do you think about that? Like these lost kids, the Boston bomber and all that stuff.
Like in reference, in relation to being lost and needing a structure and like the military, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's like joining these things. Like kids want to join something,
Well, lost kids want to join something, and maybe that's this is like a Peterson sort of dilemma, because a lot of those bombers, I feel like a lot of those terrorists, they didn't have a great structure, and a lot of times what the military is seeking to replace is seeking to replace a structure, because obviously those people want it. A lot of times if you want structure, you never had it. That's pretty simple. That's a pretty simple concept. I think there are some ways in which society probably could be a lot more conservative. And I don't mean, you always trigger a certain group of people when you say certain things like that. And what I mean is, like, you can have the great parts of family values and not see that as an opposition to liberalism. Even though there are great critiques of both conservatism and liberalism, I think a lot of people treat these ideas of being mutually exclusive, and I think our propaganda machine has kind of reinforced that idea of them being mutually exclusive, and I don't think they really are. If you really open things up, I think we can have a very tolerant society that also has a strong emphasis on family and family structures, and I think that does ultimately end up solving a lot of those problems. And yeah, there's a lot of directions you could take that conversation, but I do think with those extremists, well, in that case, that would make the military, it would make it harder for the military to prey on that population and to prey on people who otherwise might have mental health problems. And that's another thing about the military. The military stigmatizes mental health problems to a degree where you can't even there's a disincentive to accurately diagnose people, because it's like, oh, you're not mentally unstable, you don't have bipolar disorder, you're just a fucking pussy. That's basically what the mentality is. And this is done by doctors and military nurses,
Right.
a lot of the time, who have had only weeks of training compared to the actual doctor.
Well, beats the alternative where they just put you on some weird anti-schizophrenia drug, right? Like Halcyon or whatever.
Oh yeah, they won't put soldiers on antidepressants. They won't do that. They'll fucking kick you out of the military before they think about medicating you. And it's that there's an aspect there to where it isn't actual about real medical services. It's about increasing the indoctrination level of it, because it's like there's no such thing as poor mental health, just pussification, which I just don't think that's close to the realism of the situation. That's my personal opinion.
Also, I mean, and then that leaves us with these like girls and these kids that have been taken from their families, tricked and convinced to join terrorist groups because of our governments. And so I'll just read it real quick. A man arrested after smuggling British teenagers into Syria to join Islamic State fighters. At the same time, he was spying for Canada, maybe returning to Canada, just as he was promised when he began working as a double agent. The involvement of the purported spy for Canada in smuggling British school children into Islamic State IS territory while Canada was part of a military coalition fighting the terrorist group of Syria and Iraq is already a scandal. Muhammad al-Rashid was released from a Turkish jail on August 5th after his 2015 arrest, sources told British Daily Telegraph and Canada's Globe and Mail, and may be granted political asylum in Canada. Al-Rashid was jailed there for terrorism and smuggling offenses. In his defense, al-Rashid told Turkish authorities he was spying on IS for the West and had built a relationship with Canadian officials in 2013 when he sought asylum in Canada. He told police he was offered Canadian citizenship in return for information on IS, according to contemporary reports. Turkey will not allow al-Rashid, who is a Syrian national, to remain in the country, leaving few options that include him returning to Syria, where he could be in danger because of his work with the Western intelligence, Islamic State, or both, or fulfilling Canada's purported promise of protection. So, I mean, like, what do we do? Because, like, and who's right here? Like, so he's some dude who says that the Canadian government got him when he was asking for political asylum. They got him to kidnap and smuggle children, right? Which is not unbelievable that any government would do. All right. I've yet to come up with a government in the world that I think that is an impossibility for. So, I mean, is his story a lie, or is there some middle ground? And then what do we do about it? Should the government of Canada fulfill its promise? And what does that say?
Sorry, I'm not the Canadian expert.
Well, it's also worldwide too, but
yeah.
It's like, what do we do about this? Like, this is happening. Governments, we could say the same. I could pull up the Fast and the Furious, talk about how we brought guns to the cartels, how many Mexican and American kids were shot. It's the same story. It's just, this is this week's version.
I think you could get philosophical, I guess, but there seem to be obvious steps in which, if the people wanted to be aware and they wanted to weaken the bad effects of the big machine that we built, we could very easily do it, because we have the tools, we have the democratic tools in order to actually do that if we really wanted to. That's both the strength and weakness of democracy. And I think we've seen, we've seen a lot of the weaknesses in democracy in the past 8 years well, simply just because of who we've elected in the past 2 elections. Like, obviously we've hated a lot of, more than those elections, but especially the last 2 because
all the elections.
Yeah. But 1968 Democratic Convention on for sure. Everything has been like,
yeah, I mean, it's been a rough show for a lot of reasons because there's been just that system hasn't always benefited us because it like when's the last time we've had a president that's been like most males and has shown signs of balding? It's been a very long time. And to me, that's a long fucking time. And why there's nothing inferior about a balding man, you would think, but
they get some alpha male status. You think about Bruce Willis and like these guys, you know, good for them.
Oh yeah, there's nothing.
Some of them.
Obama, I think, had a kind of a LeBron James bald spot going on.
Yeah, but they always fix it. Like Joe Biden was balding, but they fixed his hair. They
oh my god, Joe Biden's such a
fix is a strong word.
Yeah. They well, he got his hair did. He got plugs.
He's a fucking plug, all right.
Yeah.
Probably his leg hair too. But
so he's like dead. Like he's dead. Joe Biden's like dead.
It is weird when his eye turns like bright red from bloodshotness and starts to, but okay. Yeah.
And he's like he's always open to getting hit with those misheard clips. Like what was the recent one? He wiped his ass or whatever.
But like that's the thing. I feel like they're doing it on
himself
purpose.
At the Vatican. That was one big rumor.
I think they're putting this on purpose because they know that this makes you like they did this once with George Bush Sr. Like he vomited at a speech in Japan, and you know what I mean. But it was like so funny. But at the same time, he was like, this is the president of the United States, the former director of the CIA. He's involved in all sorts of these contingency operations. Well, yeah, there's that too. I wasn't even thinking about the satanic panic. I just meant the contingency operations that aren't wars technically that he's operating in with Noriega and what was going on in Panama. And so they're like, oh, he vomited on his shirt. Like that kind of thing they're using on Biden. And Biden, the other thing is, a virile male bald man like Bruce Willis is very different than this like decrepit dude that's wearing human flesh and hair, right? And so he doesn't have any sort of potency on purpose. It's like that thing we're going back to with the cop that's the weakest cop that you could have for the strongest force. You're like, look how powerful this is. We could do this whole thing with this guy.
Right.
I could have a horse to be my senator,
Right.
But Biden, it's obvious to any thinking person, in my opinion, that he's failing in a mental capacity, and that's probably not traditionally appropriate for the leader of the apparent free world. And before that, obviously, a lot of people had problems with Mr. Trump, for a lot of reasons. And you can't. There's a lot you can point to, but just how the Christian right held him up as like their shining example of who they should want in the election. And, he cheated on his third wife with hookers. And, I don't want to say he's definitely on cocaine because I don't know for sure.
Hookers, they were great.
Triple MC was the one. So I remember, let me see if I can find this, Mkcanada bath salts. So there were receipts that were found. I don't know if I can even find it.
Was Trump was doing bath salts?
No. So the idea, they were trying to suggest that Trump was on some sort of an amphetamine-like analog salt that existed, kind of like an Adderall like substitute.
McDonald's fry salt.
Yeah, but there was, the idea he was very peppy. We'll give him that. But
he was very peppy.
But you look at some of the other ones, like Macron was on a thing called Triple MC. I don't know. I'll have to find the article on it. But they found a bunch of crypto receipts that were showing that he had purchased analog synthetic stimulants. And Trudeau had analog synthetic stimulants as well, Triple MC, which is some sort of a cathinone, which is related to the amphetamine, but it's the Soviet branch of it because it's made from cat instead of from ephedra. And it has an oxygen attached to the molecule or something. So it's something you can't trace really, and you can't get tested for or something like that.
Were they handing it out at Bilderberger meetings or something?
They give kids Adderall.
Drug.
There was another one, was ISIS soldiers drug. I don't know if I can find that article. There was, the drugs were given to, they have a special kind of amphetamine called Captagon, and it was invented in the 60s or 70s, and they have the only manufacturing facilities to make Captagon in the world. And so you have these dudes who've been awake for 36 hours sometimes or more, 72, and they're just like zombies, you know what I mean, with machine guns. But just you can imagine like Blitzkrieg level Adderall, that exists. But I mean, so I still thinking about this, like the Fast and the Furious, and getting these guys. We're watching our governments do these things, working with these people, and they're like, hey, the ends justify the means. We got to smuggle some teenagers out of the country and sell them to these other people. Like, what do we do about that? Like, I feel like making, it feels like that movie, like Don't Look Up. Like, shouldn't we be worried? When do we start being worried about the fact that the government openly is trafficking children?
Oh man, I hear you. I totally agree. I mean, people just need to start waking up. I mean, back to what Kurt was saying, like earlier, like people just don't want to admit sometimes, and like people take that to the extent of the maximum extreme sometimes in areas such as child pedophilia, or paying attention to what your world leader is doing and what shape he's in, or any kind of conspiracy related thing.
Communist agents spying on Iranian Canadians, Trudeau do nothing. Like all these governments that are over there, that are over everywhere, spying on their citizens.
Yeah, exactly. Like everyone's spying on everyone. Everyone's hacking each other. It's just like, oh my God, the amount of time and resources being wasted on all these wars that we don't even know about, all these undeclared wars. Yeah, I mean, like we don't even know we try to have a finger on the pulse, an idea of what's going on under the first few layers of the onion, but who knows? Like we try to have an idea of the stuff that's already happened, putting together the pieces, but it's tough to know what's going on right now.
Well, dude, if Canada can't fix it and they're nice people, then what are we going to do, America? Right? So Kurt, what do you think about the U.S. military? Like, can we make it better or not? Is it just the whole thing? Can't have armies and wars anymore? What do we do?
Well, I think we're quickly approaching the point in time to where we almost don't even need soldiers. It all depends on how quickly technology and manufacturing and war manufacturing kind of takes off. But when you think about all the sophisticated shit that is out there, and like how many missiles you can launch from 30 miles away and hit a precision pinpoint, a lot of that shit really is wild.
Right. By the way, that was invented by a Canadian 3D map making system invented by Uno Vilho Halava in 1957. There's a whole thing on how he was able to design that.
Yeah, and actually at some point it might be cheaper to manufacture a missile than it will be to train a soldier.
It is now. Plastic drone. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And there's only so much time before governments jump on that and they extract it to its fullest and greatest degree. I think at this point, how do we make the whole thing less brutal? How do we keep the world from becoming just one giant police state and one giant military state from that? I think we do have the powers,
and a bunch of plebes, right? Because you're gonna have vegan plebes everywhere, like in Demolition Man, that can't defend themselves.
Exactly. I think the main hope for the U.S. right now would be if shit hits the fan to a degree where we actually do have a third party entering the system, a third party that would actually be the first party to actually be willing to cut military spending. I think that's half the battle, is just realizing what you have, and I think realizing where the United States is on the world stage. I think if we did cut our military spending, it would also alleviate some pressures in other parts of the world. That's my theory. Again, like obviously we do see the greatest battle as being between the East versus the West. So it's hard to know exactly how people will feel about how But I also think that would force the U.S. military to be a lot more efficient. As brutal as we are, we still have crazy, insane military contracts where we end up paying like $30 for a can of beans because there's a lot of instances like that where there is a shit ton of waste in the United States military, and it's only there because of contractual obligations. If we were forced to cut, it might be forced to make it more efficient, so we might not actually be losing as much as we think we're losing if we would cut military spending. That's my theory or thesis, I guess. As far as
military could have its own gardens, it could make its own food. It would come up with new solutions for things. A lot of other militaries do.
Yes. That's my thesis, but the only way I see that happening at this point is if a third party were to merge. And I think there is a lot of growing libertarian support. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but if that would be, I think, a feasible option for actually being the only party that would actually functionally cut spending. Because
it's happening, I feel like the left and the Democrat and Republican are becoming one party. I mean, they already are, really, but like it's just gonna kind of,
yes,
it might even within 100 years just be called that. But they already are all friends and everything except for the Trump period. So it'd be very easy to just create a new third party. The problem is, as it rises to 5% and we get to have taxes for next year, we could do that. It'll happen soon, I'm sure of it. The problem is that the two other parties are going to kind of become a party. So it'll be them versus the third, again.
They attempt to adapt to a certain degree. Like if with the student loan thing, it might not have happened. Like if there weren't such a huge following of Bernie and how much he threatened the Democratic Party. So they do try to adapt, but I think a lot of their attempts at adaptation have fallen. They've been a little bit tone deaf. Both parties, they have this cycle of just becoming incredibly tone deaf to how they try to garner votes, and they don't even attempt a lot of the times. Like we hear this manufactured message of a third party vote is a wasted vote, even though we're supposed to value the sanctity of. I think that's one of the most abusive things you could actually tell someone. And I think that's the most abusive thing that's come out of any voice from either of the major parties is basically, if you vote for the third party, you're really just voting for the other person. And that is such a, I would call it a dehumanizing statement, not just a dehumanizing statement, but one that threatens the sanctity of even the idea of voting. And we fail to see how oppressive that even a major party candidate suggesting that idea, it just shows you how fucked everything is. Right. Because why should they be even suggesting that type of thing? Why aren't they just trying to validate those people's opinions and saying, hey, I hear your opinion. How could we cater to your votes? Instead of trying to cater to those votes, they're just trying to become more entrenched in their own opinions and fire up their own base as if their own base is going to give them more votes for being more extreme. It's kind of gross,
Right. We got a super chat. Stefan asked, didn't Bush vomit because he was poisoned? No. And I think I pulled up the thing that showed they say it was a gastrointestinal flu. That's what I believe, kind of, because I feel like he would have just said it was poisoned if he could have, because that would have been like a great, even if he wasn't poisoned, that's a great story, right? Like, who would try to, I got to use this for international security, that would have been a thing to do. I don't know, but maybe not. I just think that him playing the fool was really where his son figured, like, dude, when I get to Yale theater, I'm going to study clowning and I'm going to be the best clone in all of this land. That's how W. Bush became such a great, like, Shakespearean vaudevillian actor, right? And that's why he can do the Matrix flip when you throw a shoe, because his hand-eye coordination is like Anakin Skywalker.
Kids today, they don't know that Ronald Reagan was shot, and that's because he lived.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't.
Man. Well, there's let me see if I can pull up the reason I was asking that. There was an article that was funny to me about this idea of like fixing it, because if we go towards, we could replace military with cybersecurity. We know where people are, stop them in their tracks, know what's happening, predictive programming,
Minority Report.
But the thing is, Canada's spy agency developing new policies to better support its many neurodiverse employees, right? And this is an importantly, like, people are different. There are code breakers working to thwart terrorist attacks in Ottawa, and a sleek modernist building in Ottawa, the Communications Security Establishment decodes, translates, and analyzes intercepted communications, protecting Canada from espionage, extremism, cybercrime, and hacking. I think also certain kinds of black market trading that goes on in Canada that's not, the government wants their taxes. But among the 3,100 analysts, linguistic mathematicians, and other experts working at the CSE, many of them self-identify as neurodiverse. They include people of autistic spectrum, people with dyspraxia, dyslexia, and other neurological conditions that were once thought of as impairments, but are now increasingly thought of as neurodifferences, cognitive variations with advantages and drawbacks. Amy, whose last name the Globe and Mail was withholding for security reasons, has worked on classified material at the CSE for some time. She would not say exactly how long or what her top secret work involves, but she was happy to discuss her learning disability diagnosis and her leadership at the CSE's Neurodiversity Affinity Group. This is a group is one of the number of initiatives the Signal Agency has put in place to support its many neurodivergent employees to ensure that the intelligence environment is welcoming to gifted new recruits. So on one hand, rad, you know what I mean? This is cool. We're gonna have a lot of autistic soldiers and they're gonna be great. I'm convinced, especially at security and algorithms and pattern recognition. On the other hand, some of these people, do they identify as cats? Like, where are we going here? And what do you think about like this as an alternative to the military? Like, because this is what we're building.
Can you pull it back up?
Yeah. Let me go back to you. Electronic spy education workforces about certain common sensitivities amongst neurodiverse people, including discomfort with persistent eye contact and public speaking. Adjust its deployment assessment tool so that those who aren't adept at communication or feel uncomfortable speaking in public or making eye contact are not penalized in performance reviews. And it is ahead of government departments in framing special accommodations for people on the autistic spectrum.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems just like another almost another packaged form of mind control or obedience control. I mean, to a certain extent anyways. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? It's all about centralizing everyone, getting control, getting everyone chipped or tracked, whatever way possible, and controlling that behavior. Like now we're looking at eye contact, and I mean, I mean, it is, it is for this divisive group of people, but I don't know.
I mean, it seems interesting that we're getting to the point there's so many people that probably can't function in the normal military, right? And yet they have these neurodiversities that make them maybe really efficient at pattern recognition or something like that. They're able to pick up on, some crypto, like encoded message or something like that. But it also means that the military is becoming less violent, and they're not gonna, this, instead of a boot camp, they're training these guys to spy on people in a quiet way that they can meditate and everything. I mean, I don't know. Is this going to replace the military the way I see it in the cyber future? Is that what's going on?
I don't think so.
It's like, I think the military is weirdly great at adapting to some things, and just like the most colossally slow, like, on other things. Like, now they're starting to advertise like, oh, if you have more tattoos, you can come serve. There's like, really, like, in 2022, you're just like now relaxing some of your tattoo policy, like, think
that's because that Jeffrey Dahmer movie came out, and apparently he didn't like to eat people with tattoos, and so like vampires don't like garlic, but tattoos, cannibals.
So there's a recruiting deficit. There's a major recruiting deficit, and it's getting worse. They're actually not meeting their goals, and they're like, oh, how do we solve this? Well, part of it is now we're having such a huge teenage obesity problem that a lot of teenagers aren't eligible, and I'm like, that's statistically true. I'm not trying to say that's a good or a bad thing, which a lot of people might interpret that as a bad thing. You can't fat shame. You can't do it. There's that aspect, and well, I think a lot of people are starting to see the weaknesses of joining the military. A lot of I don't think Gen Z is necessarily stupid, so there's that aspect, and the way they're trying to adapt, it seems like it's so behind the curve of like what what they actually need to do in order to get their expectations up. Because now a lot of people are starting to see through the scam that is the university system, because a lot of the university system, your money's not going into actually getting educated. You can go pirate any book online and learn almost fucking anything. It's ridiculous. So it's becoming less about actually educating people, and it's become more of a social club that's designed. And the loan system is also designed to keep people down, because you can't pay back your student loans early in a lot of cases. Like, you have to let it accrue interest. You can only make there's a maximum payment you can make each month. And I think that's evidence of what the system is actually designed to do. And it's not about raising the lower class to the upper class. I think it's actually about reinforcing Yeah, it's actually the opposite. There's that aspect, but now I think people are starting to see through it a little bit. So you're going to see enrollment numbers go down. And when enrollment numbers go down, you don't have as much of an incentive to join the military, because you can't you can't get that shit for free anymore. Well, I mean, you can't want the free shit if the free shit doesn't look desirable anymore. So that is a huge part of, I guess, the military crisis. And what the fuck are they going to do? I don't think they're going to adapt appropriately, because the way I see, I'm so negative. I think no one knows what the fuck's going on. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I think, some things are just kind of remedial. They're right in our face. So the solutions are right in front of our face, but nobody kind of wants to do anything about it.
Totally agree, man. Absolutely. I used to sit on the board of governors for Confederation College in Thunder Bay, and looking at enrollment numbers, retention numbers, all that shit. I mean, I can go on to a huge fucking rant right now, but I'll keep it simple and just say that I totally agree with you. And I'm surprised, especially with the pandemic and whatnot, I'm surprised that colleges like Confederation haven't been seeing crazy slashes, and we're not already seeing like a whirlpool of freaking schools going down the drain. So I totally agree with you, man. Absolutely everything you said, basically.
Dude, the schools were so nuts. I remember when I was in Cabrillo, which I think they want to change the name of, because Cabrillo is like the explorer, and they're like, oh yeah, well then he was horrible to Indians, whatever.
Fuck that guy.
They're gonna call him Aptos or Palisades, or I don't know what they want to name it, but it's sad. But Cabrillo Community College, one of the greatest. They spent millions, like $12 million or $20 million, getting all these new buildings built, and it was right before there was gonna be a major budget drop, and they knew it, so it was all set up. And they're like, we were not gonna be able to populate these buildings, but if we don't do it now, we won't be able to have it in 10 or 15 years when we're going to be able to use those buildings. So it's like this crazy thing where this money gets spent in these crazy ways. And then you're like, wait, why is there no money for food in the cafeteria? Why is the food in the cafeteria suck? Well, it's because like the board of governors' nephew owns like this meat packing company. That's why you're eating pork that guy could sell. That's the deal. The only way he can sell his pork. I mean, it's out of control. We got a good super chat here, dude. Matt Deemer's $20. Thank you. Canadian dollars are good money. I like the colorful money. Any thoughts on John Hutchison? Do you know who John Hutchison is?
No.
It sounds familiar.
Let me see. Like Hutchison Wumpa? No. John Hutchison, Canadian inventor. That sounds about right. Known for Hutchison effect alternative energy devices. Interesting. Dismantling Navy ships. Okay, well, I don't have any thoughts yet. I'd like to know more.
Military background.
Let me read it. In 1969, John helped out the Riverview Hospital as a janitor and other adventures. In 1970, John started his own gun museum in North Vancouver. He started anti-gun control cases with the... Hold on. There we go. John Hutchison's life changed drastically in 1979. This is a great website. Look at
some
this.
Goodwill Hunting shit, dog.
Dude. In 1979, his life changed drastically when upon starting up an array. Oh, I think Bernie, you got to know something about John Hutchison. I know you do. Life changed drastically upon starting an array of high voltage equipment. He felt something hit his shoulder. He threw the pieces of metal back to where it seemed to have originated and then flew up and hit him again. And this is how he originally discovered fundamental frequencies can shift gravity. Bernie, do you know anything about this? You heard of this guy?
Yeah, I had to join back in just to talk about John Hutchison. On my other YouTube channel, Burn Eye, Mind's Third Eye Science Guy, I've got a video where I talked to Hutchison during his APEC presentation, and I'm actually in contact with John quite frequently, and we're going to be doing a stream together in the next month here.
He's actually just setting up his research lab again to start doing more of his experiments.
What is his deal? What are these experiments? I'm just hearing about this guy now. He sounds awesome.
John Hutchinson, the Hutchinson effect. He's a famous Canadian researcher, inventor of the Hutchinson effect, where he was able to levitate metals as well as transmutate them and fuse different metals together. A lot of people claimed that it was all bunk and fake, but I also worked with Bob Grenier of the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project and all of his cold fusion LENR research and studies, and he's confirmed the transmutations on the samples of Hutchinson's metals, like the picture you have displayed there. Bob Greenier's an academic in the UK who looks at them and has shown the different EVOs and the plasma cold fusion reactions that happened within it.
Wow. And so this is just using but this is using high voltage, like Tesla high ampage or low.
Yeah, it's a combination of that and then a bunch of old US and Canadian Navy radars and sonars and all sorts of high frequency equipment that he combines the different frequencies together to get these sort of reactions and effects.
Many different political factors ensured Hutchinson would not be allowed to continue his research unless he signed agreements with either the Canadian government or the U.S. military. John refused both offers. Wow. So what's he working on? What's he trying to do with electricity?
Yeah, just different levitations of metals and objects and stuff is what he's most known for, and what he's working on to prove again and replicate the effects now that he's got real scientific community involved and interested, that he's setting up his lab again at his new place with, like, it's ridiculous how much equipment he has. Sadly, he had to just take down his YouTube channel again due to a bunch of strikes and violations.
Wow.
Otherwise, I would just send you over there to show some of the videos. But I will be doing a stream with him soon, and I'm trying to get him to do a tour of different YouTube channel streams. So hopefully, I can have him on your show eventually.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. We'll definitely set that up, and I can't wait to watch the video you already made. Where can I find that video that you have with him again?
Yeah, so that's on Burn Eye, Mine's Third Eye, Science Guy, BURNEYE on YouTube.
I'm gonna try this. Burn Eye Science Guy. That didn't quite work. I'll try that again. Burn Eye. Say it again.
URN.
Oh, here we go. I found it. Burn Eye.
The Science Guy. Burn.
Burn. Burn.
Project. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Click on that one. There we go. There's my channel.
Burn Eye.
And then under videos, it will be the APEC highlights. So down a little bit more. Keep going down. Yeah, I'm part of the APEC conference every month. There we go. Left there.
Oop, there we go.
That one. Nope. Wrong one.
I was there. I swear.
Up.
Burn Eye APEC amazing appearance to the world. Top.
There we go.
Sweet.
Indeed.
All right.
Okay. I think about 10 or 15 minutes in is the Hutchinson part.
Legit.
Oh, that's Kevin Day. It's after Kevin Day. Sorry.
Boom.
Oh, Nick Cook. Sorry. Keep going. There we go. There's John Hutchinson.
Oh yeah, and you also got
I've got the famous troll. He levitated trolls back in the day. So
it looks
that's
like
why
Rob Sitch.
Whoa. Yeah, dude. He's like he looks like he could play guitar. I'll tell you what. Trust that
right?
guy.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome, man. So like, yeah. So do you know anything about like when he started using electricity or like any of that stuff?
He's been doing it for probably 4 decades now. And like he had a bunch of like US scientists and army people that he did experiments with. He was contracted in Japan for about a decade doing different experiments and stuff like that. And sadly, most of his research, after talking to him at APEC, I found out most of his stuff he doesn't even own the rights to, because he was getting funding by different private organizations and governmental organizations. So he doesn't even own like the documentation of his results and all of that.
Oh,
and
man.
that's why he's working now on reproducing it all in his new lab under his own funding.
Dude, that's the most Canadian story I've ever heard. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually had like a similar story to like Nikola Tesla, where in his apartment building, like his neighbors apparently had stuff like levitating and stuff. Like they like freaked out, called the authorities, and he got raided. Like, yeah, just all sorts of crazy stuff. Quite the wormhole, this guy. So I'm looking forward to being able to talk to him again and do a full interview with him.
Dude, legit. That's awesome. Well, I mean, we did a pretty good Canada. Is there anything you guys wanted to cover you were thinking about also? Like there's some more in your mind, or I can introduce you guys out either way.
I got nothing right now.
Canadians pray for peace. That's what I'm going to end with. Let's not escalate to World War III. Let's just all hit the bong and get along, because we legalized
pack the pipe and you know,
dude,
have a smack.
Pack the pipeline with oil again and get things flowing.
Dear God, this people, we can't pray.
Pray for Canada. If you can't pray for Canada, pay for Canada by sending us money, and that'll be good enough. Thank you guys for that. Let me pull up Bernie. I showed you your one page. Should I go to Crypto Alchemy, or what else can I link you to?
Appreciate the shout outs.
Bernard, we got to get you on Divulgence sometime, my friend.
100%. Yeah, because my main thing is alchemy that I do through electrolysis.
Okay.
And I've reproduced a lot of Sir Isaac Newton's alchemy results in forms of transmutations in metals. And I make my own monoatomic gold and silver and colloidal waters and all sorts of stuff.
It's a sweet name, too. Crypto Alchemists. I mean,
we got to get you on.
Thank you.
Dude, an American Time Machine. Let me go to American Time Machine. My favorite band, and you know, some of the deepest music that I listen to. Don't Actually Kill Yourself, still number 1. I'm gonna start trying to bring up to the top Clussy more, because I think that's the one that
I Eat Ass. That sounds like a great tune.
I Almost Had a Girlfriend is also like really good. I think it's in is it an Anti-Demon, or where's I Almost Had a Girlfriend?
Oh, it's that's the last one. That's on a
Witchcraft.
Yeah.
Witchcraft number 2. I Almost Had a Girlfriend. Really good song. Really fun. It's like almost had a girlfriend. It's like
almost had a girlfriend.
It's not quite as funky. It's like Scottish Highland drawl pop. I feel it. I feel good about it. Okay. Then the Divulgence. Divulgence.
That's right. Podcast. Divulgence, baby.
I did it right this time. The Divulgence podcast, which you can go to his website. You can find his videos as they emerge, but definitely make sure you're.
Oh, not that one.
That's the wrong one. I was wondering. I was like, hey, that doesn't seem right. Hold on.
Unbelievable.
Divulgence.
Not that.
If I type your name and always Jordan, Zao, boom, Divulgence podcast right here.
Beautiful. There we go.
Dude, that twerp put itself ahead of you. So make sure you guys get to the right one. 245. Get it up to 247, maybe 3,000.
Get her up to 250 and keep her going.
I like that. I like that use of Kubrickian. So that's always good. But yeah, subscribe here and make sure you're watching these videos, and tune in next time for another exciting adventure in Canadian mind control with Mkcanada.
We might have Philip Hodgson coming on next week to talk Camp X, so stay tuned for that, because if he comes, it's gonna be fucking ballin', boys.
Dude, yeah. And then Kurt, I think we're doing 8 p.m. tomorrow. So guys, we'll see you tomorrow as well. Peace out.
Do it.
Later, guys. Later, Kurt. Good to see you, man.
Great to see you.
Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created, this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, Canadians have confidence in our